Hi, I'm Serena of Cactus Clouds Art. Welcome to my studio. I just finished my 1 week sketchbook challenge and I want to tell you all about it and the things that I learned and the insights that I had while I was doing it. I'm going to give you a tour of the whole thing, but I was also posting shorts with a tour of what I was working on each day, pretty much every day. I started the year with this project and I went from January 1st to January 7th. I'm sorry I'm just filming this now, but it just took me a little bit of time, and you know what, that's fine. And with that said, whatever you are working on, and I feel impressed to say this based on some of the comments that I've gotten from you guys as I was doing this project, you are doing a great job. Whatever kind of art or craft you are creating, whether you're doing a whole bunch of it or just a little bit, you're doing a fantastic job. If you want to be more creative in your life and you feel badly about not doing it as much as you wish, figure out just a little bit at a time. Do a little bit of art at a time. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be a big, huge project. It is okay just to sketch for 5 minutes when you get in bed for the night. I definitely did that during this project. Maybe a little bit more than 5 minutes. You can make time to access your creativity every single day if you let yourself. Maybe when you see my videos pop up, don't even watch it, just set it down, set the phone down, or you can play it on your phone and grab your sketchbook and do a little sketch while you're watching my video for 1 minute. If I pop up on your shorts feed, you have permission. Pause my video, set your phone down, and take that time to just do a little doodle. You can access creativity every single day, and whatever you are doing, you're doing a great job. Let's get into the tour. And like I said, I posted shorts just about every day with my process of thinking as I was filling 12 pages a day. So I'm not going to do that here. What I am going to do is voice over the tour and tell you all of the things that I thought of and the insights that I had while I was making all of this art. So let's get into it. Okay, this is the sketchbook that I used. Let's talk about logistics first. This is a tiny sketchbook. I think it's 4 inches by 4 inches, and it is available at Michael's. It's on the end cap in the sketchbook aisle, and it's anywhere from $2 to $5 based on if they're having a sale or not. I think I paid $2.50 for the brown one. My kids were doing this challenge with me from the start, and they got different colors, and they paid the full $4. I mean, I paid the $4. You know what I mean? So I decided I definitely wanted to use a small sketchbook for this challenge because I wanted to fill the whole page. So I prepared for this challenge by dividing the 80 pages by 7 days. And it came out to like 11.3 or something. So I rounded up that I needed to do 12 pages a day. And then I used little tab markers. You can see the little birds are tab markers, and I marked out my divided 12 pages a day so that I would have a general look at my progress just at a glance. The only other preparation that I did was ordering the Artix acrylic brush pens. I knew that I had wanted to get some, and I thought my children would enjoy them as well, but I also had it in my mind that those pens would fill the pages faster, and so it would be helpful to have a medium like that at my disposal. And they were something that I've been wanting to buy for a while anyways, after I had experimented with a set of them that my friend has. And so that was the only other prep I did, was I ordered some markers, and I had them coming. I think they arrived on day 2. Okay, if you were wondering about what that chirping noise was, my bird was on my shoulder and she got real noisy, so I just sent her to take a little nap while we do this voiceover, and we can continue now. If you have seen my shorts, you've seen my bird, and she is an absolute delight, but she does get noisy sometimes. Okay, let's get back to it. So I can tell you immediately, day 1 of this project, I learned some things and I had some big insights. So you can see from the first 3 illustrations that I did, I was just continuing what I've been working on my sketchbook for the last few months, because that's where my brain has been, is working with a fine point fountain pen illustration. And I've been practicing specifically on taking more time and really trying to draw what I see. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later, but that's where I started. And I very quickly realized that I was going to have to change my expectations just to get through day 1. And so after those first few beautiful illustrations, I pulled out some highlighters, and I just got to the point where I was trying to fill the page as fast as possible. And that did actually lead to some very fun things. The highlighters were in a set, and so I was picking them randomly without thinking about the color, which was a fun exercise on its own. But then I was just trying to fill the page, like this heart page with all these silly little faces. I literally couldn't outline with a straight line by this point. I was exhausted. And so I really had to change my expectations of what the artwork would be. And I don't think I necessarily dropped quality as much as changed the tone of the artwork. Now this is day 2, and day 2 is when my Arctics acrylic brush pens arrived. And so immediately it was swatching those pens, exploring the way that the brush tip works, seeing what kind of lines that I could make, and playing with the different shades of each color. So day 2 started out very easy because I was truly just exploring, which is the first thing that I do whenever I get a new art supply, is just exploring it and feeling it and seeing what it can do and testing the colors to see how they look on the page. And so these first few illustrations came very easy to me without too much thought, because I know how I like to test out new art materials. You don't overthink it, you dive in, and I have like some standard things that I draw. Like I love just drawing a quick little mushroom. I did these flowers, just different shapes of I love flowers and leaves and botanicals, and that's really my go-to. So day 2 was easy for the first half of the day. And then I got into, like, this started to be after sunset that I really started thinking, what can I make here? And that was when I started just literally drawing blocks. And then I thought these blocks of color need to be filled with something. And so I started writing words, and I started just writing things very swiftly about the thoughts that were rolling through my head as I was making this art. And this one about finding complementary colors offensive is something I'm also going to talk about later in the video. By the time I got to the last pages of day 2, I really dove into journaling about the things that I thought, and I'm going to read that to you. I wrote, "I am going to allow myself to count these pages with a moment to reflect, because it is important to recognize moments, thoughts, and outcomes, and because I don't want to draw anymore." What have I experienced while doing this project for 2 days? 1, I am not allowing myself to overthink what I should draw or how I should draw it. 2, I'm using my materials more freely and not holding myself back by trying to preserve them. 3, I seem to have one drawing each day that I really love. I pushed myself to do my best, while surrounding that drawing with warm-ups and experiments. 4, I'm discovering by doing, not by thinking, just putting onto the page. 5, I can see the areas I have grown. I used to struggle to fill a whole page edge to edge, and that is not the case anymore. B, I seem to have a stronger understanding of color theory and composition, and my drawing is just better than it used to be. One of my favorite insights from this first journaling page from day 2 is the recognition that I have one artwork that I really love surrounded by warm-ups and experiments. And I really thought a lot about this over the next few days of the project, because it was kind of solidifying in my mind what I think a sketchbook should be. And when I say that, I mean what it should be for me, because I do not exist to tell anybody what they should or should not be doing, or what things should or should not be to them. With that, I will talk about comparison because there are incredible sketchbook artists on social media who just can sit down and make an outstanding painting in a sketchbook and fill that sketchbook over time. And you see those flip through videos, and it can be very easy to compare yourself to them. And I think that's where we end up not touching our sketchbook because we're afraid we're going to ruin it. And being afraid to ruin our art supplies is a whole thing. I have a whole section about it published in my book. And I did a workshop earlier this week, and I heard people say I'm afraid to ruin it. And so that's something that I think about a lot as an art teacher. And I have a lot to say. You can read it in my book if you've gotten my book, about what I think about that, about not creating out of fear of ruining materials. And I can share that in another video. I probably should make a whole video on that, but I'm going to go on with what I think a sketchbook should be. And what I learned is that I like my sketchbook to be a place to do exercises, to test out shapes and lines and materials and mediums. I like to test things like those materials and mediums. This images that I'm flipping through right here is an example of that. I started testing the colors of these pens and working with different shades of one color. And lastly is references, which you can see in these illustrations. I put a color palette on the side, and I marked the number of the pen that I was using. So now I have these sets of colors that I know exactly how they look because I've created with them, and I've turned that artwork into a reference that I can look up later. And that includes, I put swatch pages that you saw earlier in this sketchbook, and I know that those swatch pages are in there. I didn't feel like I was cheating by just doing a swatch page instead of creating art, because that is an essential reference, and that will likely be one of the most reviewed pages in this sketchbook for me. Now, for most of the 7 days of this project, I was alone while I was creating. And so I was in my head, I was listening to music or in a quiet room or hanging out with my family. And I had thoughts going through my head while I was creating. And often those thoughts would lead to whatever I created on the next page, because I would have a question that I could then answer by experimenting with my materials. One of the days, I met up with friends. My friend hosts a to-do Tuesday at a local coffee shop. And we decided to meet up, and I made my to-do to fill 6 pages of my sketchbook while drinking my tea and hanging out with my friends. And I ended this day also with a journal page, which I'm going to read to you now. Today, I liked this project less because I tried to work on it while hanging out with friends. It felt like my art was sloppy and careless, and I wasn't enjoying or proud of it. However, as I have worked on this project this week, my family has sat with me in my studio and chatted with me while I've drawn, painted, and sketched, and it hasn't been a distraction at all. I wonder what made the difference. Location, just being more comfortable with my family, or the additionally limited time I had at the coffee shop today. I have enjoyed this project so far much more than I expected to, but alone. Now, I feel like this experience was an important part of this week challenge, was changing my environment while I was hastily creating and seeing how that made me feel. I feel like there's really something there, like I did a study on myself and how I interact in the world with my friends in new environments. And it was just a really interesting thing to think about, that when I was hanging out with my friends, I love hanging out with my friends. But as far as the artwork and the challenge went, I did feel rushed and I didn't find joy in creating. And I don't necessarily have an answer or a direct analyzation of that, but it was something very worth noting. And as I'm thinking about this now, I want to make the note that I have spent time with these same friends creating art in my sketchbook in various coffee shops around town. And I have enjoyed it thoroughly, but not when I was on a deadline and having to make a large amount of art. And so I learned about myself that if I am drawing leisurely, hanging out with friends is great. But if I am doing work with a deadline, I've got to be alone in my studio. Now, I made a brief outline of what I wanted to talk about in this video, and the next point says, complementary colors. I learned to love them in 6 days. And for this purpose, I really love that on day 2, I created an artwork that I was literally offended by, where I had drawn a bunch of shades of yellow, and I thought they were lovely. And as soon as I surrounded them with purple, I literally didn't want to look at them ever again in my life. And that's the page that I wrote, I am offended by complementary colors. Now, by day 6, I was reaching for complementary colors, and I was using them in a way that brought me joy. And so that is perhaps one of my favorite things that I took from this challenge, was that as I was going through different exercises, like even this one that's on the screen here, was a color theory study about using the complementary color to create the shading on an object. And so I tried that multiple times that day. So by the next day, I was reaching for complementary colors when I never do. And not only was I reaching for them, but I was excited about them and I was feeling happy about the outcome. And I was even outlining objects and letters in their complementary colors, and it brought me joy. And so it was very cool to see that in 6 days of like rigorous use of artistic materials and experimentation with color, my mind changed its opinion about something as essential to art as understanding the use of complementary colors. Now, let me take a minute to share that I don't have a formal art education. My life took a different turn pretty much as soon as I enrolled in art school, and I had to give up a scholarship and things. That's a whole other story. And so most of my art for most of my career has been full rainbow spectrum everything. And I love a good rainbow, and it brings me a lot of joy to blend colors in that way. But the root of the reason why I do everything in rainbow color is because I don't understand color theory. And so seeing the way that my understanding of color changed in 6 days of almost constant illustration and painting through this project, I saw that growth, and it was really cool. Okay, next, I developed a new obsession during this illustration project, and that is onions. I have never drawn an onion, but I found myself by day 6 drawing onions and literally feeling enraged if I was drawing something other than onions. And I find this really interesting, and again, I don't really have anything to analyze or speak on about it, except my enthusiasm for onions, my newfound enthusiasm of onions. First of all, they're my favorite vegetable. I love an onion. Secondly, as I got to illustrating them, I was discovering how many textures are on an onion, which made them so interesting to illustrate. And when you cut open an onion, they have a whole new range of textures and shapes inside of them. So there's the papery outer that crackles and breaks and gets crinkly, and then there's the roots, and then there's, if there's any growth, there's the shoots that grow out of the top of an onion. There's the wide variety of shapes of onions. There is so many different colors of onion. And so I found, here's my onion, I found so much joy diving into this study. Now, all 6 days, all previous 6 days, I was just, what do I draw? What do I draw? I have to fill these pages, looking around the room, picking random objects. But by day 6, I had hooked on something, and I found that very interesting. Now, I have regularly found myself almost frustrated at the way my own brain works, that I've struggled in the past to focus on one thing long enough to really study it or master it. A lot of the time, I would do one painting of one object, and because I had done it, it was now boring, and I had to go find something new, something novel to appease my ADHD brain and study something new. And so this obsession with something that I could do it over and over and over to really study it and understand it really has only happened with pink eraser art and with clay, and I don't think it's ever really happened with two-dimensional art for me before. And I have definitely left this project with a desire to study onions more. And maybe that'll even become clay studies. Maybe I will also do pink eraser art studies. But it feels really cool to have discovered something that kind of lights me up. And it's silly that it's onions, and it made me laugh, and it brought me joy. Now, did I enjoy this challenge? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I enjoyed it. I felt very happy when it was over. And I felt at some points very stressed while I was doing it. My first week of 2026 was a blur. I rarely looked at my family because even if I was chatting with them and spending time with them, my nose and my hands and my eyes were glued to my sketchbook. So yes, I learned things. I saw and felt like visible and obvious growth in my understanding of illustration, but I disconnected very much from the world. And even the fact that I was feeling stressed while hanging out with my friends in an environment that I usually love was a signifier to me that this was, it was a challenge. On the last page of day 6, I wrote down some thoughts, and I'll read that to you now. Let's talk about the things I have found to be funny throughout this project. It is that everything about this goes against what I have been purposefully working towards in my last few months of illustration practice. In my everyday sketchbook, I have been focusing on slowing down, really paying attention to detail and drawing what I actually see. Focusing on no longer drawing the general idea of things and actually drawing the thing, which is what made a lot of these illustrations in this project hard. I've been teaching myself to slow down, and then I challenged myself basically to speed draw. So figuring out that balance has been a fun part of the challenge. Today I realized I was enjoying myself too much on some of the drawings and needed to speed up, and then the drawings went to shit. So I had to entirely change the medium and the subject matter. I also discovered that I love onions. I'm probably going to draw more onions tomorrow if I'm honest. They are so rich with pattern, texture, and form, and there's so many different shapes. I feel an onion focus coming out of this challenge. Maybe a lino cut of varieties of onions or some really detailed onions in dramatic lighting. I also took this challenge time to practice color theory and experiment with complementary colors, which was good for me. Next question to answer for you. Do I suggest this challenge? I'm not sure. I do believe that the only reason I was able to complete it is that this is my job. This is how I spend most of my days anyways. I live every day in my studio. I work full-time creating art, filming tutorials, and selling artwork. I do not think it would be easy to complete a project of this scale if I also had to go work as a cashier and come home exhausted, or if I was working in an office all day and wanted to get out of the office and go exercise at the gym. If my life was laid out differently, I think that doing this challenge would be a struggle. I don't suggest taking on challenges that will cause you frustration or pain or guilt or any kind of negative effect on your mental health. If you are thinking about doing a challenge like this and you're already feeling like you're talking down to yourself, don't even go anywhere near it. You stick with doing art for a few minutes each day, spending a little bit of time, enough time that you're finding joy in it. Am I glad that I did this? Maybe. I'm not sure. I missed out on the first week of the year, but I also grew in my illustration and understanding of different materials and color theory. So it really was a sacrifice, but I also gained skill from it. So I'm not going to recommend this challenge, and I will never host this challenge. What I do recommend is making time in your life to do something creative at least every other day and find things that bring you joy. Okay, bye.